thank each and every one of you for taking the time to attend today, and I believe it is through open communication that we are going to be able to come together and solve what is a very, very important issue. Today we have quite a few guests in attendance, and I'd like to begin by thanking those who are in attendance. Esther Pauls from Hamilton City Council. Esther, she's from Ward 9s and 7. Brad Clark. Is Brad here as well? Brad was going to be coming, as well as your own ward councillor, Ted McMeekin. Ted, he's here. There you are. Thank you so much. And also, Mohammed from the City of Hamilton, who works in the Community Strategy section, is also in attendance this evening. You also may have noticed that Hamilton Crime Stoppers is in attendance, and I would like to recognize the vital role that community volunteers play in facing issues such as the types of crimes that we are going to be addressing this evening. I'd also like to give a very warm welcome to our first speaker this evening, the MPP for Milton and the Associate Solicitor General, Zee Hamid. Minister Hamid is a former 3-term elected councillor and has served Milton as an MPP since 2024, focusing on making Milton a better place to live, to work, and to raise a family. And he lives there now with his family, with his 6 children. Congratulations on that. Also speaking with us today, we have Superintendent Sean Blay, Detective Staff Sergeant Paul Corrigan, Sergeant Matt Robinson, and Analyst Travis Johnson, all from Hamilton Police Service. Now I want to make a few comments myself. Tonight's turnout is pretty impressive, and I think it's an obvious indicator of something that is important to each and every one of us. Crime and the escalation of violent crime for residents not only in Hamilton and Ontario, but really it's becoming a global issue. We hear you. As a mother, I know what it feels like to worry about your own safety, the safety of your children, your grandchildren, and your family, your loved ones. Unfortunately, that sense of safety that your home provides appears to be coming under threat. And that's why I felt it was extremely important to have the discussion that we are going to have tonight and to talk about the steps that the Ontario government and Hamilton Police Services are taking to combat the rise in a number of types of crime. As your MPP, it is of the utmost importance that safety and security of all is maintained in our riding, in our home of Flamborough-Glanbrook. Tackling crime is really a priority of mine. I was fortunate enough when I was elected this last election to also be elected as Speaker of the Ontario Legislature, the first woman in 158 years. And with that job came an appointment to the executive of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. And it's an incredible opportunity. I get to travel and meet a lot of people around the world, but I wanted to harness the opportunity that it provided and tackle an issue of importance. And it had to be something that was nonpartisan, but had a global impact. And so I'm focusing on human trafficking, which, believe it or not, Hamilton has probably, I think we were just talking earlier, it's probably number 4 when it comes to human trafficking in all of Ontario. Talking to police, we could pick up the phone right now within seconds, contact 200 people who are being trafficked in the city of Hamilton. It is a huge, huge crime. So when I decided to take on this particular issue, the first person I reached out to was Hamilton Police Chief Bergen and his team. And they met with me and they helped me figure out how to go about working with other police services and identifying what some of the priorities were. And they said to me, Donna, if you can do anything, let's get a registry for the traffickers. I'm very, very proud to announce that since then, that was just last fall, the government of Ontario, this government, passed legislation in the spring to include human traffickers on Ontario's sex offender registry, meaning that when they are convicted, that information can be shared with police from across Canada and south of the border, because these people are being trafficked globally. But more importantly, it will track them and hopefully prevent them from moving freely across the country. It also resulted in legislation being passed to help the victims of human trafficking. Often when people are trafficked, traffickers place the victims in debt. If it's a young woman in the sex industry or who's being sexually assaulted, or a victim of labor trafficking, they take their credit, they take their identity, they buy things under their name, they ring up credit card bills, and these people, even if they escape, are mired in debt. We've worked with financial institutions, and now they are working with these victims, so when they are rescued, they will forgive all of their debts. They at least have a good place to start to move on with their life. But we are here tonight to talk about crime that affects each and every one of us, and it's an increase in auto theft and home break-ins and other types of crime, personal crime. And Minister Hamid has taken on that specific crime. He's been focusing on it and working on it since he was appointed minister. And he is here tonight to share with you what the government has done and what we can continue to do to make sure that our communities are safe. Zee.
Thank you, Speaker. MPP Skelly, sorry, not Speaker here, but you always speak for me. I mean, I'm sure you all know that, but MPP Skelly is actually the first female speaker in the history of our province. And she runs a tight ship. Boy, do we get in trouble. So introduction. I will skip my introduction because MPP Skelly, I'm Donna. Is that okay? Because I don't get to call you Donna at the house. We have to call our speaker and we have to bow. Actually, I'm not kidding. We actually do have to bow. Nobody's see her in the chambers. So I'll just call her Donna. She introduced me already, so I'll skip the introduction. But she introduced with 6 kids. We cheated. I have 3 kids. My wife had 3 kids. We got married, so we can almost say final kids. But at one point, we did have 6 teenagers in the house. It was a really hectic time in the Hamid household. Multiple of those teenagers were playing hockey. So my wife and I never saw each other. We just sent pictures and we texted each other. Sometimes we would see each other in a hockey game to go to some other game. I get distracted. I kind of went on a tangent on hockey games. But I was thinking about it when Donna was introducing me, that when they were, we had 6 teenagers in the house, the way, and I'm sure those of you are parents already know that, one of the things raising kids is consistency. When they know that they break the rules, there are consequences, and you're consistent with them. And if you compare that to our criminal code, that's the one thing missing. It used to be the case that criminals knew that if they did the time, they would be caught and they would do the time, like they would be punished. But that is one thing that's broken from our criminal system. It goes back to Bill C-75, I think to 2019 when the Trudeau government passed C-75. They really broke the bail system. They broke the criminal code. And since then, we've seen an increase in crime of all sorts. Auto theft, when I was younger, many of you would remember, used to be a crime of opportunity. A teenager would see a car with keys inside, take it for a joyride. Sometimes criminals would steal cars to commit other crime. But now cars themselves are a commodity. So auto theft is done by organized crime, not by teenagers. And these organized crimes then use the profit from auto theft to fund guns and gangs and get to human trafficking and drug smuggling and all sorts of other nasty, nasty things. So auto theft itself is no longer, well, it was never a victimless crime, but it's really not a victimless crime. It's something that we directly impacted by. My wife bought a Honda CR-V and she came when tariff talks started. She felt very patriotic, and Honda CR-V is built in Ontario. She's like, that's the car I'm going to purchase. And she got a Honda CR-V, and it turned out that it's one of the most stolen vehicles in Ontario. We didn't know that. Our insurance went up to $600 a month just for that one car, with absolutely no claim, no tickets, nothing. So we're all impacted directly as well, but then we're impacted again because, like I said, the organized crimes are involved, and then they use the profit from these cars to recruit young children, and I mean children, as little as 14 years old, into their criminal organization. They then go in to get involved in gun violence and gangs and drugs and human trafficking. And like I said, all sort of other nasty things. And the only way to stop that is by strengthening the criminal code and fixing up the bail system. So when we come to Q&A, when it comes to Q&A, I'll talk a bit more about it, but I want to touch base a little bit on the investments our government has made in trying to work around the federal criminal code. Just on the bail front alone, we've invested $112 million to create dedicated teams within police services to monitor high-risk offenders that are let out on bail. And that's a complete utter waste of money, because these offenders should never have been let out on bail. But yet we are, so we have to kind of work around that. We've created, I was talking to Hamilton Police earlier, just when we were waiting, about bail compliance dashboard. We've created this real-time bail compliance dashboard that allows police services to get a real-time view on where these criminals are that are out on bail, to make sure they don't reoffend, and if they do reoffend, we can get them early, because they move around. I did a ride-along with Peel Police, and Peel Police had just done a largest drug bust in Peel history. $45 million of cocaine. The individual that was transporting $45 million in cocaine, I think 3 or 4 days later, we went to do a compliance check to his house, and his house in Brampton, and he was out in Timmins. Well, what is he doing in Timmins? He's out there to attend a festival, apparently. We called a surety. Sureties are, if you get on bail, somebody provides surety that I will keep an eye on this person will always be with me when they leave the house. We called the surety, and the surety was like, oh yeah, he's in the shower right now, I'll have him call you back. One thing that I was shocked by the way, before I got this role, I didn't know that was a thing. Do you know that sureties don't even have to provide a real address? They can provide an address of a forest, and judges will release people under the surety. Police will go to a compliance check and find out it's really a forest or it's a commercial plaza. Sureties don't actually have to put money down. So if you watch US movies, there's a bond system and you have to have a bond to get someone out. We don't want all that to that extent in Canada, but for repeat bond offenders, there was a case that I heard about in Halton, where the criminal was such a high-risk offender that the surety was like $70,000 or something super high. Even then, you don't have to put anything down. You can just come up and say, yep, I pledged $70,000, no problem. So that money is never collected. So if a person out on parole reoffends, we can never collect that money because it never put anything down. We have issues, and I'm sure Hamilton Police deals with that as well, multiple sureties, where we have professional sureties that will provide surety for 5, 6, 7 people. So there are issues with our criminal code itself, and in Canada, criminal code is strictly federal. So it's something none of the provinces can do anything about, and this is one area where all 13 premiers, NDP premiers, Liberal premiers, obviously Conservative premiers, are united that we need to fix the criminal code because we can't do anything about that. It's strictly federal. So I'll conclude my remark with just 2 quick stories when it comes to bail that really drives me nuts. I did, what was it, Milton? I think last week I did a town hall in Milton, my own writing, and on Monday, so this would be about a week or so ago, there was a case in Markham where 5 people kidnapped a woman, then went and used her as a hostage to rob her house. Then they went to another house, robbed that house, and shot the person. York Police did a tremendous job, got them arrested within hours. Well, 4 out of 5 within hours. The 5th person was still in large. The ringleader was already out on bail, so he was already arrested, let out on bail. The charges were probation on bail, obviously, but also they had a stolen vehicle, so stolen car, home robbery, well, it's break and enter. Home invasion is not a different charge, but whatever, we'll call it home invasion. Attempted murder and kidnapping. They were all let out on bail. So the question is, what do you have to do in this country to not get bail? And this is a person who had already violated his bail before. He was already out on bail on different crime. In terms of criminal code, because bail reform is one part of it, this is real data. 99 convictions that were done in Milton, my riding of Milton, for all of them. Out of 99 convictions, about half, 48 of them, got 0 jail sentence. 0. And the remaining, what's the math? 51 or whatever the number is left. Thank you, she's much better in math than I am. That's why I do politics. The remaining 52, the majority of criminals got 1 day. That's it. So as a society, we're looking at that crime and we're saying, you know what? We think just a probation, maybe 1 day in jail is enough. And the 1 day in jail, by the way, they don't actually go to 1 day in jail because that's time served already, right? Because when they were arrested, they got on bail, they already get credit for that time, so they actually do no time. So vast majority of convictions that happen after police arrested them, built a case, Crown prosecution prosecuted them, built that case, judge gave out the punishment. After all of that, after all that time, money, and effort spent, they get no time in jail. So if you're a criminal, oh, by the way, this is actually also true. They make $8,000 to $10,000 for stealing a single car, or one, and they can steal 4 or 5 cars a night. So you're thinking, well, this is really worth it, because even if I get caught, I'll get out on bail, and I'll do it again. If I get caught again, I'll get out on bail again. Then people who've been out 5, 6, 7 times, and by the time I actually get punished, they'll just be slapping the wrist, and I would have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's totally worth it. And that's a real problem with that criminal code. We talk about bail reform a lot, but our punishments are way too weak. I think I read on for a while because I did a sneak peek and looked at some of the questions, and I thought I would pre-answer some of the questions. But with that, I'll pass the microphone back to you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister. And I wanted to mention, yes, thank you. If you have questions, Andrew, if you want to raise your hand, you can see Andrew, just write them down, or he'll give you a paper, and we will be going through it. We have some questions that a number of people had already emailed in. They are before us now, and if you have other questions, just please contact Andrew. But now I'd like to hand it over to Hamilton Police Services just to talk about the situation here in Waterdown, in Hamilton, and also what they're doing to combat crime. Who wants to get on?
Thank you, Speaker Skelly. I'll call you Speaker Skelly if that's okay, and Minister Hamid. This is my second town hall with the Minister, and very supportive of the Hamilton Police. Before I begin, I do want to thank each one of you for coming out tonight. The fact that this is the largest in-person crowd that I've seen for a town hall speaks to the concern this community has for public safety. You guys are very busy. You're all contributing members of society. And the fact that you're willing to take some time out to discuss this important issue, it's not lost on us. We mentioned that Councillor Pauls is here. I'd also like to speak to the fact that she's the Vice Chair of the Police Services Board, and our Chair, Don Robertson, is here somewhere. There he is, took my glasses off. Also very supportive of the Hamilton Police, very engaged, rarely miss an event. So thank you very much. And I also see a member of my Superintendent's Advisory Committee back there, and and Councillor McMeekin, and I'm apologizing if I missed anyone else because I've taken my glasses off. But Carm Quimbayo, I've asked one of your beat officers to come here, not to be put on the spot, just to hear what your concerns are, because I think it speaks a lot stronger when they hear it straight from your mouths, rather than me constantly reinforcing what we hear at these meetings. So before we begin, Travis Johnson here to my left, I've asked us all not to stand, because when I do, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And Matt Robinson is one of our crime managers. Whenever you guys call us for ongoing issues, more quality of life, not 911, Matt's usually one of our 2 quarterbacks in the division that'll help come up with a problem or a way to solve it. And then a really good look at grandfather, brand new 1 day ago, is at the end there. That's Detective Sergeant Paul Corrigan. Yeah, thank you very much. He runs both Travis and Matt, as well as all the detectives for Division 3. So we are going to get into the brains of the operation here to get through the presentation. We're going to be available for questions. We'll add our own input there between Matt and I and Paul. And then we'll talk about Polar Bear, which was a very successful stolen auto project. That'll reinforce a lot of the benefits of the partnership that we appreciate we have with the government in power right now, and the grant monies that they lend us, or not lend us, give us on a regular basis.
Hi there. So I'm Sergeant Matt Robinson. I'm a crime manager in Division 3. There's another guy named Sergeant Dave Alshin who couldn't be here today, but we do that. We look at reports, we look at statistics that Travis provides, and we try and come up with strategies, responses to certain things. So just to give you kind of a brief overview of where Waterdown and this area sits with the police, with the Hamilton Police. Our division roadways, as you can see on the map there, I know it's tiny for a lot of people sitting there, but Division 3, there's 3 divisions in Hamilton Police, Division 3, Division 1, Division 2. Division 3 is the biggest one. That's where we are right now. The minimum officers that we put out on patrol in Division 3 is 18. Compared to Central, it's 16, and in the East End Division, Division 2, it's 17. The roadway that we have to patrol 24/7, 1,972 kilometers, which works out to about 110 kilometers per officer, compared with 60 kilometers an officer in downtown. It's a lot of patrolling that officer has to do, in terms of also the distance that they have to cover. And not just the patrol officers, but they are also supported by multiple different units within the service, by our Support Services Division and our ISD Investigative Services Division. And so with that division, we break down the area into beats, and each beat is occupied by one specific officer. So out here in Flamborough, we have 3134 beat, which we are right now, and that's Waterdown. We have an officer. 3130 moving up to Freelton, 3132 Mill Grove area, and 3131 moving up more towards Linden. So that's 4 officers that are also supported by 2 beat officers down in Dundas, 2 officers in Ancaster. For MPP Skelly's district in total, it wraps around all the way through parts of Ancaster, Glanbrook, Bidbrook, part of the Central Mountain, and then obviously into Stony Creek there as well. So these beat officers, these are the officers that you see in the black and white cars. They respond to calls for service. There are a lot of calls for service. And when they're not responding to calls for service, they're expected to be acting proactively. And that is actively patrolling your neighborhoods, whether it's through special attention bulletins that my office or other people send, saying that there's been a rash of breaking and enters here, out of theft, kids trying doors at night here. In addition to just that, they have follow-up investigations. So when they respond to a call for service, if it's not a gigantic investigation, that's their investigation that they will carry on for many shifts. In addition to that, they will be doing proactive warrant checks, compliance checks, and doing traffic safety, so doing their own proactive traffic enforcement. Compliance checks. On top of just patrol doing compliance checks, we have our offender management unit that also does compliance checks, but when I say compliance checks, it is, as we were speaking about earlier, people who are released on, whether it's bail on a release order from the court or from the undertaking, which they're released from police custody. They have certain conditions that they have to abide by. Some are very enforceable, such as curfew or house arrest or associations with certain people. So those are compliance checks that we do, and then we manage that through our intel unit with a wonderful dashboard that provides information to frontline officers to determine who are the people that we need to keep an eye on.
There's currently 820 on the list.
820. So those are the officers that you're going to see on a regular basis. They are then supported by our investigative services division, that is through BEAR, major guns and gangs, our intel unit, major fraud, victims of crime, which includes child abuse, our ICE unit, our sex assault unit, and many other support services. So when you see that it's just 4 officers there, it's not just 4 officers, it's backloaded with a bunch of investigative services and then support services such as your emergency response unit, your K9 unit, your Marine unit, and other small units. So it's not just 4 officers there. Moving on, Travis will talk about some crime trends here.
Hello, sorry. My name is Travis Johnson. I'm the Divisional Crime Analyst of Division 3. Part of my role as a crime analyst is to maintain a detailed understanding of crime and disorder in Division 3. Each of the 3 divisions has a crime analyst. We meet every day and discuss crime trends within our division and any statewide trends that there may be. There are also divisional analysts with different investigative units. There's a BEAR, so break-enter, arson, and robbery analyst, and intel analysts. So today I'll be speaking to you about high-level overview of trends in Waterdown. For Ward 15, crime trends, assault year to date from 2024 to 2024, or 2025 has remained steady. Auto theft, sexual violation, and theft over have seen decreases year to date. Break and enter as well has seen a decrease. Robbery, there has been an increase in this area. Theft from auto has seen an increase from 34 to 43, and theft under has also seen a decrease. With regards to auto theft in this area, following 4 years of steady increase from 2021 to 2024, there has been a significant decline in the number of stolen automobiles in this area in 2025 when compared to this same time last year. You'll see, however, 56 total stolen autos this year is significantly higher than the low in 2021 of 16. So while there has been a decrease in this trend, it is still significantly higher than the 5-year average. The decline that we've seen in the city is likely due to a result of Project Polar Bear, an investigation into organized auto theft, and Sergeant Robinson will touch more on this shortly. Similar to the trends in this area, the city of Hamilton as a whole has seen a decline in auto thefts in 2025 when compared to year-to-date 2024. But again, this is following 4 years of steady increases and is still above the 5-year low in 2021. Pass back to Sergeant Robinson to discuss Polar Bear.
So Project Polar Bear, that information was released in the media when they made these great arrests. It is one of just many projects that the Hamilton Police Services does. This one was in relation to auto theft. It targeted organized crime as it relates to auto theft. It was sophisticated. There were many vehicles being stolen, and this project team was able to conduct a 1.5-year long investigation that saw over 200 vehicles being stolen, and of those 200 vehicles, 88% were recovered. And that's approximately about $50 million in value. And a lot of these vehicles that were recovered on their way to Montreal and destined to overseas. And if they weren't destined to go overseas, they were meant to be and were rebid and then distributed domestically around the country and sold to unknown people. When they make that arrest, they recover 2 loaded handguns, seized an additional 14 vehicles, an amount of cocaine, but ultimately 7 people were arrested and charged with numerous offenses, and 6 of those people, as much as we've heard about people not being held into custody, but at least in this instance, 6 people are still held in bail since February, and they're in custody. One of the reasons why that is likely is the province has provided additional funding to combat auto theft that saw additional resources for our service and many services across Ontario, included our BEAR team, which investigates auto theft, commercial robberies, breakdowns, having their own analysts and the addition of more investigators. And lastly, this saw the implementation of a dedicated Crown attorney that oversaw this entire project. And what's beneficial there is, if you can imagine a 1.5-year long investigation that has hundreds of pieces of evidence, over 200 vehicles stolen, and that whole case file landing on the desk of a Crown that now has to fight, hold someone in custody, and they have to learn it in X amount of time. This Crown attorney was well prepared, not that they never are, but this Crown attorney was well in the know along for the entire ride and was able to present a case to hold this person, to hold these people accountable and in custody, and it worked out fantastic, and they are still in custody. And I would talk more about it, but I wasn't necessarily involved in the investigation. It's still before the courts, so.
Thanks, man. Just to sort of piggyback onto those comments, is having that assigned Crown, it was one of the first instances where we've had the opportunity, and I believe that part of the reason that these 6 individuals are still in on bail is due to the fact that there's also the ability to prove the organized crime piece of this that the minister had alluded to. It's not uncommon. If you're looking at videos, you'll see vehicles in Africa and other countries still driving around with Ontario license plates on it. The funding that we were providing, grant funding, was also given to surrounding police agencies. We know that this particular crew wasn't targeting many of the vehicles that were stolen in Waterdown, but the fact that the surrounding police agencies also did around the same time projects resulted in many of the vehicles that were being stolen in Waterdown, basically putting an end to that temporarily. 56 is still not something that we're excited to report on, especially when you look at the pre-COVID numbers, but it is much better than last year. So, as far as calls for service, I also, as the minister did, kind of looked at some of the questions that were pre-submitted, and one of them is, will Waterdown be receiving some additional police resources in the near future, whether it be by the building of the new station, Station 40. We usually look at data to guide our deployments and our strategies, especially when we are limited in our staffing resources. So I'll just point out, if you want to take a look at the screen, you'll see different wards on the mountain. These are all the different, although several beats make up one ward. Primarily we're in Ward 15 and Ward 13. Those are the two that Speaker Skelly is speaking to today at this town hall, and I know we're going to be talking to Glanbrook next week. You guys are lucky and maybe unlucky to have some of the lowest calls for service in the city. Actually, not just the Mountain Division or Division 3. And if you notice the top line there, those are officer generated, so the orange part of the bar, those are proactive police efforts. So I regularly hear that you don't see the police, you want to see more police. We hear you. They are there. We're looking at over half of the calls for service are done proactively in Ward 15, and just about a third of the calls are proactive in Ward 13. So that's something that we ask the officers to do. You'll see them sitting in parking lots, and we often get complaints that they're just sitting there doing nothing. Any firefighters in the room? We don't get to barbecue our dinners and shop for an hour at Fortino's and have a sleepover and call that a shift. We have to eat in our cruisers, which are our offices as well. It may take an hour or two to get that paperwork done. There is a lot of expectations from the courts and the crowns due to the new requirements and evidence and DNA and everything else that these officers have to ensure are buttoned up tight, or we may not get that conviction in court. So we do ask them not to hide behind the buildings, but try to be open and transparent. And if they are a window to window, it's usually they're sharing notes. They're usually one's taking a statement from the victim, the other's taking a statement from the complainant. If they were to drive all the way back to Station 30, which is at 400 Bramble Road East, they're out of your area for at least 35, 45 minutes one way, especially during high traffic time. So that is a big reason why the board has approved the building Station 40, which is currently underway, hoping to be done by Q2 of 2027. And that will be basically the home base for all of the officers that are deployed to Dundas in the Flamborough area. And we still don't have the numbers yet for that. That is part of an ongoing project. So that would be, barring any questions, are we done? Okay, back to the crime manager expert. Sorry about that.
There's some crime prevention tips up there, if you can see it. A lot of them are pretty basic, such as keep vehicles locked, don't leave valuables in cars. Tough to do sometimes, but people still do it. At the back, there's only approximately 30. Those are from a grant that the province gave us. We only have 30 left to give out, but Faraday bags. So how a lot of vehicle thefts are happening is essentially using all that great technology in your car and then using it to subvert it and essentially take your car. So that is through signal relay. You've seen videos on the news, and someone will come, hold up an antenna near your door where your keys might be. Someone will be back closer to the car, and they'll relay that signal and take your car. Other methods are getting actually, whether they break in or are able to access the car computer system. And there's two different ways to do it. I won't go into depth, just so I don't give away how to steal cars, but there are ways that they do it. Okay, so if you look online, there are different blockers and different locks you can get to block those ports that people can access the computer on your car. Everything is generally defeatable, but these are just steps that we can take to protect some of our property. But as I was saying, so that Faraday bag, there's 30 of them in the back, they will block that signal. So if you leave your keys at your front door, it'll defeat that relay. So those are some things in relation to cars. Never leave your car running. This is still a common thing that we especially see in the winter. That many of our cars, especially crimes of opportunity, which we don't see that often in terms of auto theft anymore, but crimes of opportunity for people leaving their cars running, just to run to the store or to warm it up, someone will steal it. So please do that. And lastly, GPS tracking. There are companies out there now, and it's unfortunate that you have to take these steps to pay extra to put a GPS tracker on your car, but these are things that you can do. They work great. I've seen them happen. We get calls for service for a car that was stolen 2 hours ago, and then the company will say, we found the car. we're with the car right now. That's fantastic. And I know that certain insurance companies will incentivize that for you. Just if you get a GPS tracker on your brand new 2025 Toyota Tundra, we will drop your rate. There's that. For home defense, lock your windows, close your doors, don't advertise that we're going on vacation, especially on social media. People pay attention to that stuff. And if you are going away for a certain period of time, have somebody look after your house, make it look like it's lived in. That goes a long way. Cameras, although not necessarily a common, an awesome deterrent, because as you'll see in the news, and just if you live in Waterdown, I'm sure you've seen people checking car doors. Those cameras help with investigations down the road. Okay, so, and this will go to my other point about reporting things. So what'll happen is people will see that someone was checking your car doors at 3 o'clock last night, and the police aren't gonna do anything about it, so I'm not going to report it. If you don't report it, then we don't know about it. And I can guarantee you that someone checking your car door at 3 in the morning will not be investigated like a homicide. It will not. The resources aren't there, it doesn't meet that priority, but it will be looked at. If there's video evidence, that can be connected to something else. And if we can lay charges because that person in that video was actually found in this car 2 days later and wearing the same clothing, there are just connections that can be made. So it helps with future investigations, maybe the one that you're reporting, and it alerts the police that, you know, at this point at Dundas and I forget the name of the street, but either way, that we need to send more patrols and more resources to a specific area. So that's it right now for crime prevention tips. And that's our contact information up top there. Traffic complaints, aggressive drivers hotline, very helpful. They'll send letters out to the ROs. Sometimes it changes behavior. The crime managers, those are 2 numbers. So crime manager office is not a place to, for an emergency, certainly not. And even a non-emergency, it's for general complaints, and I'm having these major issues in our neighborhood. When something is happening, I'm having this view with my neighbor, I need to either call 911 if there's a safety concern, or I'm gonna call the non-emergency number to just still get in line with everybody else, just not get into that 911 line for a dispatch response. And lastly, I'll stop talking after this. Going back to crime prevention and reporting things, you can report most of the things online. So I don't wanna, if you think you don't wanna come to the police station, or I don't wanna make a phone call to report because I might seem like nobody cares, we do care, but you can report, I promise we do, you can report that stuff online and it will be followed up by an officer through our website. I promise. So that's it for the presentation, and we'll move on from there.
Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to questions, and as I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please see Andrew, and you can just share your questions with him. We'll be wrapping this up about 8:30, so we have enough time to hopefully respond to the questions that we have before us and any questions from our audience. First question for me: what role does our MPP have in advocating for and fighting for issues such as crime, and have you been hearing from a lot of residents regarding this? Tonight is an example of what we do when it comes to advocating for measures to keep our communities safe. But I will say that the current government makes crime prevention a priority. I've never seen a more passionate person than the Premier, and I'll be very partisan when I say this. It is a priority for him, but we can only do so much. The minister sitting beside me is a ministry that was formed specifically when we saw an escalation in auto theft. And some of the measures, the one that the police mentioned about the Crown Attorney being assigned solely for one particular case, that is a direct result of changes that Minister Hamid and the government have brought forward, with additional funding, of course, for the courts and for the police services. But the reality is, and I know we're all looking for a quick solution, we have to put pressure on other levels of government. We have some some city councillors here tonight who are very, very supportive of Hamilton Police. I am extremely supportive and very proud of our police services. I've gone on ride-alongs, and what I've witnessed is not for the faint of heart. You mentioned sitting and having something to eat. I forgot that they had to have lunch, and we didn't stop all night long. And with this big guy, and I'm sure he was starved by the time he stopped at, I think his shift stopped about 4 in the morning. The very last call was responding to a young woman with 4 children whose previous partner was circling the residence and breaking in, and we had to get them out of the house and into a shelter at about 2:30 in the morning. So you deal with some things that many of us couldn't imagine, but the reality is we have to back and support our police. It is a tough job, and we need levels of members on council who also support police. We also have to hold our federal elected officials accountable. We have to have different judges who take these crimes seriously. The young man who was charged with raping a child in Niagara had been out on bail after being accused of a similar sexual assault. We had an incident with our own premier who was in an accident, and the alleged person involved in that accident recently is alleged to have been involved in a similar incident resulting in the death of a young father. Again, out on bail. This can't continue. We must put pressure on our federal counterparts in order to see these changes at a higher level. But the next question, I see some people shaking their heads, but there really is, we're doing what we can. We really are doing what we can. We have to have 3 levels of government come together and make it a priority. Question for Hamilton Police Services. What steps are being taken to address youth involvement in vandalism, drugs, gang-related activities, especially when organized criminals exploit the Young Offenders Act to avoid accountability?
I'll try to take this and then I'll ask for any other input that anybody would like to give. But we have experienced quite a bit of problems with youth crime in all areas of the service. We in the mountain, I think, experienced it first. A scary increase in assaults and robberies, usually youth upon youth, using bear spray. It seems to be almost every day that there's a school going into lockdown or having to evacuate because of a deployment of bear spray or mace. Councillor Pauls actually has looked into a bylaw to try to limit the purchase to specific ages, but we know that they're able to purchase this online. We've had pellet gun shots fired with pellet guns and now these new water gel pellets recently as well. I guess, one way we could look at it is grateful that they haven't escalated to firearms yet, because we've already seized 259 firearms this year. We've only had 252 days within the year. We have had projects. We do have a youth engagement team. These 3 officers, they specialize in knowing our youth. These youth, if they are deemed high risk, they're called strategic targeted offender program lists, and that's similar to our compliance checks, where we'll check on them. They may have conditions. The issue with that is, as you've heard already, nothing better than a real story. We had several youth involved with street robberies, one where a youth was in Tim Hortons. This group of kids went in there, assaulted him in front of everybody else, beat him significantly to steal his jacket. He had to be taken to the hospital. They were charged accordingly, and one of them was given a curfew of 9 p.m. So during this project, we checked on him. He was breaching. We located where he was. His older brother also on condition that left the house to try to go get him before we could find him. And he was held in, as he is, for another bail hearing. And the one thing I guess I should say is, if there's any confusion, we will request bail to be opposed. It's not our decision on whether they're released or not. That's based on a justice of the peace, or in some cases a judge. So this justice felt that the 9 p.m. curfew may have been too onerous, so they released him the next day as expected with an 11 p.m. curfew. So that is the frustration that our officers feel when we are trying to hold them accountable. And as alluded to, we are bound by legislation. We enforce the laws. We don't make them, we don't write them. And the YCGA Act is something that I know that I believe the CACP and the OACP has recently met with the federal ministers requesting, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police and the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. I do believe that there's been sort of a request that we look at reform legislation, try to provide a little more teeth, including the YCGA, so when a young offender, commits a very serious offense, they can be tried as an adult, and try to find other methods through legislation to try to deter the use of exploiting our youth. Schools, we are in our separate school board, unfortunately, we're working with the public school board to get back in there. We recently had community partnerships with local community organizations where we brought Crime Stoppers and our youth officers to address youth crime to families, trying to give them supports. The City of Hamilton does have a lot of really good programming to try to keep youth out of criminal activity and support parents who are struggling, single parents who have to go to work, they're not there to watch them. So there's a lot of really good supports, you just have to ask. And once again, the Crime Manager's Office or our website, you can reach out to anybody in any division that you may live in, and they can provide you those kinds of steps.
Thank you. The next question, again for Hamilton Police Service. What are the current rights of civilians and homeowners in terms of self-defense? Can I legally defend myself without being charged?
Yes. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. You can. Okay, there's two sections of criminal code. Section 35, where it's spelled out very clearly, and I'm going to read a little bit. I'm not going to bore you, but I'll break it down. Right? A person is not guilty. Not guilty. Criminal code normally says a person is guilty. In this case, it says it's not guilty of an offence if they believe on reasonable grounds, and reasonable is very important. I'll talk about that in a second. That they are in possession of the property. We're talking about property. We're talking about your house, your car, your business, your wallet. That's property. It's not just a property being residence. Okay. I'm just skipping over to the legal part. We don't need to know. Okay. They believe on reasonable grounds that another person is about to enter, is entering, or has entered the property, is about to take the property, steal from you, or is about to damage your property. So the act you take to defend that, if it's reasonable, you're okay. So what's reasonable? As a police officer, we always look as reasonable as being what the average Joe or Josephine would say, yeah, I can see why you do that. Okay? So 6'6" linebacker, bench presses 300 pounds, is coming into your house. What's reasonable? You need to use a lot of force. Turn around. You're the 6'6" linebacker living in the house, and the 5-foot guy coming in 100 pounds, and you break his neck because you're angry. That's not reasonable. And that's the way the courts look at it. So the criminal code, the government, a couple of years back, they gave instructions to judges under section 24, and they said a person who does something like this is not guilty of an offence if they believe on reasonable grounds that the force being used against them, or another person like your family, or the threat of force is being used, or the act that constitutes the offence is committed for the purpose of defending or protecting. So if you do something and you're defending yourself, that the act committed is reasonable in the circumstances. And you get 9 things for judges to consider. It's for the court to consider, not for you to consider. One is the size of the person coming in. Do you know the person? Was it a weapon? What's the age? What's the gender? So they give these as a number. Is there any history of interaction between them? So is this your neighbour you've had a neighbour trouble with, dispute for many years, and now it's come to a head? There's lots of different things that I take into consideration. At the end of the day, it's your property, you can, and there's also common law. Right? There's a history of common law going back centuries where if you have a piece of property, you can defend it reasonably. So, the number one thing I would say to anybody, and sometimes people forget this, in the heat of the moment, you call 911. 911. You say, somebody's coming into my house, and he's taking my car, it's an act in progress. That is under the priority system, which Susan talked about, that says certain things in motion where we get there very quickly. So, you call 911, you say there's a person breaking into my home, we get there as soon as we can. You don't call 911 and you start taking these people on yourself. You see how the difference that makes for a judge to say, well, why didn't you call 911? This has cropped up in some cases. So call 911, and if it's reasonable, the force you use, it's the same, but rules apply to police officers. You see police officers getting into trouble because sometimes you get angry, and you're
arrest somebody and the red mist comes in and you forget you've got to stop. Once the person's down, you can't keep hitting them. So if you've got a guy running away from your house, you shoot him in the back. No, that's not allowed. Logically, right? It's reasonable, because the guy's going. So it's all reasonableness, and that's where the criminal code explains it. And I know I've seen the last few days, criticism of people saying that people have to stop people at these 9 reasons. No, you don't. You're defending yourself, the person's running away, you're good. If you go after them with a baseball bat, keep hitting them, no, you can't do that. And the other thing I'll say, anything you see in the media, any of these things, remember, we're not getting the full story, because I've read them all, and I don't know the story of them, but I'm sure there's a much deeper, because when the detective decides to lay charge, there's a bigger background thing going on that we don't know. So,
that was a good answer. Now let me give you a political answer. So mix things up a little bit. So police officers actually receive a lot of training. They understand the law a lot better than average citizens do. They have de-escalation techniques that we don't have, right? They have stun guns and all that sort of stuff. There was, so there are actually numerous cases, I'll just mention one, but there are a lot of cases like that where courts find that homeowners did use reasonable force and charges get dropped. There was a person in Milton, at my own writing. This happened about, I want to say 4 years ago. Someone broke into his house. Now, I don't have full detail of the thing either, you know, let's mention the media, but someone broke into his house, armed with a gun, put the gun on his mother's head. Now this homeowner was a licensed gun owner. He took his legal licensed gun and shot the intruder and ended up dying. He was charged. The courts found that it was reasonable. Charges were dropped. It cost his family $140,000 in almost a year, 14 months actually. So there is a bit of a disconnect from a political point of view, right? So it's if the bar is as a homeowner, you're thinking, oh, I don't have $140,000 to hire a lawyer and go through months and months and months of criminal case. And so the Premier has been very, very clear that if someone crosses that line and breaks into your home, then the rules should be different. Like, you should have a lot more of a right to defend yourself, and the rules under which you charge need to be a lot higher. So the officer said, if you chase them and shoot them at the back as they're 200 meters away from your house, reasonable people understand that's not reasonable. But in the heat of moment, expecting you to control your adrenaline, you're an average citizen, and suddenly you have a baseball bat and you're expected to calculate what the reasonable force is and exactly when you should stop. I don't think that's a reasonable expectation, because most of us have never been put in that situation. I don't know how I'm going to react when I'm in that situation. So I do think there is something that needs to be looked at. A lot of Commonwealth countries, actually, castle law is a Commonwealth thing, not really an American thing. Standing ground is a whole different thing. I won't talk about that. A lot of countries have castle doctrine, right, where somebody comes into your castle, you have the right to defend yourself. We have that right as well. But there is a difference where we read stories from other countries and homeowners are never charged, whereas they are charged here. So I think there is a bit of disconnect that law needs to take a look at, and homeowners should have a lot more leeway into defending themselves. So the expectation, I think that's a good time to stop it with the next question.
Thank you. Given the rise in auto theft, this is from Minister Hamid, can Ontario better regulate insurers and car manufacturers to ensure that vehicles have proper, updated anti-theft technology and that homeowners are incentivized to install effective devices?
That's a great question. So there are two parts to it. I'll answer them separately. The first is vehicle standards are federal. And anytime something's federal, so do you want to guess? Does anybody want to guess? When was the last time Canadian vehicle standards when it comes to anti-theft technology or immobilizers were updated? I'll give you the answer, 20 years ago. So they were written in 2005, they came into effect in 2007, so technically it was 18 years ago, but they were written 20 years ago, before we had all these keyless entry and push button start and keyless start. Other countries have been updating them ever since. So European Union, EU updated them in 2021. UK didn't see the right results, so they updated them again earlier this year actually, in 2025. But Canadian standards have not been updated when it comes to immobilizer and anti-theft technology. So the officer mentioned that there are trackers, there are countries that have requirements, and technology exists, and manufacturers put that technology in their car to sell them into Europe, for example, or into the UK. but they won't voluntarily increase their costs in Canada unless they're required to. So our government doesn't have to do anything. All we have to do is say, oh, by the way, also when it comes to anti-theft technology and immobilizer, our requirements are same as Europe. So when you put all this technology here as well, they have the power to do that. Now, to be fair, the federal government did in consultation. They promised something, eventually they'll update it. I don't know what the timeline is. They haven't announced what's coming out of it, but that's a big disconnect. Now, in absence of that, they are insurance companies. So one company is Cooperative, for example. Cooperative gives you a discount if you use tag devices. Tag is a different company. And Tag claims that just by having that sticker, their sticker on your car window, it reduces auto theft rates by 90%. I've done nothing to verify that claim, but that's their claim. It might be true because they put arbitrary amount of trackers in your car. And some of the trackers are not always on. They turn on at some point. So criminals who steal your car, they have sensors when they're trying to find trackers, but some trackers might not be on, it might turn on a little bit later. And so thieves know that, and they will steal cars that have tag stickers on them, and Cooperative will give you enough of insurance discount that most people I talk to, they actually save money, including the subscription they have to pay to the tag. And one of the things I'm doing right now in my office, we're working with Insurance Bureau of Canada. I want to say about a month ago, we had a roundtable with all the insurance companies that are part of IBC. Cooperative and CAA is not part of IBC, Insurance Bureau of Canada, but the rest of us, we had a roundtable, and I'm working with them to try to standardize that discount, to see that every single company can go out and say, hey, if you do this anti-theft thing, or we'll provide it for you, we'll give you a discount. That's in our power, we're trying to do it, but we're doing it to work around the lack of federal standard. Ideally, federal government should update its standard to make sure that we have the same standard other countries do, so thieves aren't able to steal a car that isn't tracked, or that is so easy. Right now, you can, and this is really sad, you can go to eBay or Amazon right now and buy things to steal cars. And they come with instructions on how to program them. And they come with instructions on how to do relay attack. You can go to YouTube and watch those instructions. So that's a hugely problematic thing, and that also is something only the federal government can control, because province cannot tell companies what to sell and not sell. They might be shipping from a different province, but federal governments can control that. So yes, we have a role to play. We're playing that role with insurance companies, but we shouldn't have to. We should have a better federal standard.
Thank you. Can you clarify again to Minister Hamid the difference in jurisdictions between the federal and provincial level governments in issues such as bail, sentencing, and the criminal code?
Yes, I'll try to be quick because I tend to ramble on for a bit. Criminal code is federal. We talked about that already. Administration of justice is mostly provincial, not all. So not all judges are provincial. Ontario Superior Court, despite the name, is actually federal court, it's federal judges. Part of the reason why you hear in the media so much why people got bail the same day or the next day is unfortunately because we're doing a very good job making sure they get the hearing right away. So they get the hearing right away, courts are there, judges are there, but then judges are making decisions based on the law. And a law, so I'll give you some very simple examples. Reverse onus. Reverse onus is if the judge looks at me and says, you know what, you shouldn't be released until you can convince me that you're not a threat to public safety. Our reverse onus, so by default in Canadian law, a judge must release you with the least amount of conditions. And what's the least amount of conditions? No condition at all. Or like the officer said, change the curfew from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Because 9 p.m. is too restrictive. So they must release you with least amount of condition. So what happens the second time around or the third time around? A law doesn't require judges to look at prior bail violations. So there's a ladder system in Bill C-75 where every time you come back, you go up the ladder, and then now you might have a curfew, now you might be house arrest, now you might have ankle monitors. But because it's not required to look at prior violations, sometimes they don't. So in Brampton, about a month ago, it was in media as well, there was a case of a drunk driver who was caught driving drunk for the 6th time. He had 3 lifetime driving suspensions. So imagine the officer who arrested him for the 6th time, had already been arrested 5 times, had already been charged 5 times, had 3 separate lifetime driving suspensions, was never supposed to drive. He got bailed before the news story came out in the morning on the promise not to drive. This person was never going to keep that promise, we all know that, right? But that's the thing, judges are required to do certain things, so that's all federal. When it comes to incarceration, when it comes to judges giving someone jail sentence, 2 days minus 1 day, they come to provincial jail. More than 2 years, 2 years minus 1 day, they come to provincial jail. More than 2 years or more, they go to federal system. Now, on that front, and this is not my ministry, so I'm going to read a little bit of very quickly our investment, just a few of them, not even all of them. So the previous government, when we took power, the previous Liberal government, they shut down 7 jails in Ontario and created a huge shortage. Since then, we have reopened the regional intervention center in London, Toronto Intervention Center, Toronto South Detention Center, added 430 new beds. We're adding 66 beds at Point Detention Center, 250 beds, building a new one in Brockville, 25 new beds at the Women Treatment Center, 235 in Eastern Ontario. We just did modular build in Thunder Bay and Kenora. We'll do a new complex in Thunder Bay, including cultural programming for Indigenous population. There's a lot of Indigenous population there. We opened 50 new in Milton, 50 in Niagara, 50 in Kingston, so we're adding capacity. But anyone who gets 2 years or more goes to the federal system, and I can't find a single jail that was built by federal government in Ontario in the last 10 years. So that's a problem as well. This is kind of division of things. So it's not just Ontario, by the way. I want to be very clear. It's every single province and territory that's investing in law enforcement, every single one, including NDP Premier in Manitoba, NDP Premier in BC, Liberal Premier in Newfoundland, Labrador, and Yukon. We're all doing the same thing, and collectively, and I can't think of a single issue, with all 13 premiers have written multiple letters to the federal government saying, please strengthen the criminal code and fix the bail system because the communities are suffering. I did rant it on a little bit.
You're going to rant on the next one. Are judges being too light in sentencing? Are mandatory minimums too low? Are courts, jails overloaded?
Okay, another story time. I tell just 6 stories. I should do that more often. There was a school teacher in Milton. So, school teacher who was arrested with thousands of child pornography that he produced himself. He uttered death threats, violated girls as young as 8 years old. He threatened a 14-year-old that he was going to murder her parents and brother if she didn't do what he told her to do. So, child pornography, production of child pornography, possession of child pornography, death threats, yada, yada, yada. Obviously, he's charged, he's convicted. By the time he gets out, if he doesn't get out early for time, good behavior, he will serve 4 years by the time he gets out, or for less than 4 years. In 4 years, his 8-year-old victims will be 12, and they will just begin to comprehend what happened to them. They wouldn't even be out of therapy yet. Do you know what the punishment is for producing minimum mandatory punishment for producing child pornography in Canada? 1 year. Do you know what it is in the United States? Federal, 15 years. Most US states, almost every single US state is higher. And almost every single person will get a much higher punishment. We were at, I did something similar with Sudbury Police. So Sudbury Police shared a story where they had a criminal gang where their American members were in for 15, 20 years and Canadian ones were out in 18 months. Same crime, same gang, just different jurisdiction. So there is a huge issue. Now, what the thing that happens with judiciary is a culture in judiciary. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but there's a culture in judiciary where they don't deviate from precedents. So if a certain amount of crime always gets 2 years in jail, they will continue doing 2 years. The only level of government that can tell them what to do is the federal government through the criminal code. We can't tell them what to do. So even when we appoint judges, they get trained by the judiciary and there's an independence, right? Because if there wasn't independence, they would never be able to charge us or investigate us for anything. So we can't tell them what to do. Only the law can tell them what to do. Now, we used to have mandatory minimums in this country, and to be fair to the federal government, there was a Supreme Court ruling, and they had to revisit that. But rather than looking at what Supreme Court's concerns were and addressing those concerns, Bill C-75 threw it all out. And that really started this trend of weak criminal code and weak justice system. So I talked about the child pornographer. Which other story I haven't shared yet? So this is a good one. So we did something similar with Durham Police. Durham Police spent 1.5 years building a case, investigating this gang coming out of Montreal and stealing vehicles in Ontario and taking back to Montreal. Almost 18 months of investigation, crime, whatever. At the end, they were given 2 years of probation, 0 jail time. And this is a gang with multiple charges, multiple bail violations. And they said, the investigator there said, in all of his career, the strongest punishment he's seen for auto theft, it was for a ringleader, he got 3.5 years. And these are all part of criminal code. So yes, our mandatory minimum don't exist in most things. What our government would like to see. So one of the things you can Google after you go home is Police Association of Ontario. They released 7 recommendations for the federal government to fix the bail system. And their ask is for repeat and violent offenders, number one, have reverse onus, right? So rather than default assumption being you will be given bail, there should be reverse onus. So if you rape somebody, you break into somebody's house, there should be reverse onus on you. So by default, you stay in unless you can convince the judge. They have things like if you're, for the third time, if you go up the third time after a bail violation, you shouldn't go in front of justice of the peace, you should go in front of a judge. There should be cash requirement for repeat violent offenders for surety. So if you're surety and your surety is set at $10,000, if your person violates the bail, I am saying, yep, I'm putting $10,000 down to guarantee you that I'll keep an eye on him. I actually should have to put the money down, not just raise my hand and pledge it with nothing in line. So there are a number of conditions. I encourage you to look at it. They're all very reasonable. Our government supports them all. Actually, every single provincial government supports them all. It's really time for the federal government to respond, not just with bail reform, but also strengthening the criminal code.
We're now going to move on to some questions from the audience, beginning with how long does it take for police to arrive at my house after a 911 call?
Thank you. So as soon as possible. I'll give you a stat. Roughly last year, 252,592 911 calls received in a year. So that works out to an average 700 a day. That's managed by our communications room. We have dispatchers and call takers. It is a City of Hamilton requirement, but we take on that responsibility for them. So if you call for police, fire, or EMS, it's Hamilton Police dispatchers that will take your call. The one thing I'll say before I get into how long it's going to take is many times you may get a busy signal. Unfortunately, all our operators are busy. You will literally sometimes get that. But we're talking 700 in a 24-hour period. Do not hang up and call back. They have to call every single number back to confirm that you're okay. So it's just adding more time to them. They will dispatch the 911 call immediately once they receive it. And depending on where the officers are in the city and what they're tied up on is going to depend on our response time. So I can tell you that we just had a complaint yesterday about an individual here whose house was attempted to be broken into. And I believe the first officer arrived in 10 minutes, which seems like an eternity. It would seem like an absolute eternity, I know. And yet I'm saying that's a pretty good response time because the officers are arriving from 400 Rymal Road right now. So with Station 40, those times should improve. If the officers aren't tied up on paperwork with an arrest, it takes hours to do the paper. They can't clear because they have that person under arrest. We have to find another unit to go. So it's hard to give you an exact time, but you're passing me, Travis. We do very well for 911 priority zeros and ones. We are well within our results of dispatch within a minute. And then for an emergency, it's an immediate dispatch. So that would be life in danger, shooting in progress, a crime in progress, but an injury not imminent. Our dispatch time must be within 3 minutes. We usually do very well in meeting both of those standards. I apologize, I don't have our stats with me. It starts to get to the point where we get to priority 4s, which are like noise complaints. We won't actually go to noise complaints anymore, but those quality of life issues that you might not see us for a while. So.
Thank you. I'll just respond to this question. The video recording of tonight's meeting, will it be available to show others? We are from Ancaster, and we would like a meeting like this for our area. I can't give you organize a meeting like this in Ancaster, but we are conducting another meeting, holding another meeting next week in Binbrook on Wednesday night at the community center. So if anybody would like to spread the word, especially to people in Ancaster, we would appreciate and welcome them there. The next one, what can be done? This is a very high profile case regarding the City of Hamilton bylaws, illegal cameras on houses. What will it take to remove this bylaw? Police need the camera information. Unfortunately, that's a City of Hamilton issue, but we do have, I believe we have a council that's working on something like that. So just raise your hand. And Esther Pauls is here, and if you would like to speak with her afterwards, Esther will be over there, and she would certainly, I'm sure, appreciate your feedback, because I believe you're going to be addressing this next week. Esther?
Today, we put a motion, but we didn't get two-thirds to put the motion in, so we'll do it next time.
So there you go. They need support around the city council chamber table, and she wasn't able to get enough support to change the bylaw. to allow residents to have these cameras. So this is the type of issue we were talking about. We need to support our police because that particular resident, I understand that the camera video footage that was generated at that residence was used in many investigations in the city. The next question, what is the province doing to increase the volume of cases that get heard in court? Hiring more judges, counting personnel?
Yeah, thank you. So I promise I'll be quicker on this one. So we've actually, between the last 18 months or so, we've hired 49 more judges, and I would JPs, but I can't read my own handwriting. Around the same number of justice of the peace, and in the last budget, we announced 21 more. So we're at a point right now where, for the first time in 15 years, we're hearing more cases than are coming in. So we're reducing the backlog and we're processing cases faster. Now, then you would say, why are you hiring even more judges? Because we want to make sure that justices are fast, right? So one thing that I want to be very clear so people understand, when we talk about strengthening the criminal code, we'll be talking about repeat violent offenders, because we don't want to necessarily over-punish a kid who made a mistake and found himself on the wrong side of law and will never re-offend and learn the lesson and go, like, good. Somebody got, 19-year-old got caught shoplifting, fine, whatever. But repeat violent offenders, we want a different kind of crime. So it's not just judges and courts, and we've done about $500 million. So you can quote me on it, $500 million of investment in the justice sector. But we've also added more grants. So the officer mentioned grant, preventing auto theft grant. We have another OPP-led auto theft and towing team. We've created special prosecution teams. So the inspector alluded to that as well. So we have 17 different special prosecution teams, including for auto theft. And their prosecutors or trial attorneys that dedicate themselves only to this area, so they're not distracted by other things. It also allows them to build expertise and connect the dots. So they hear a case, in Hamilton, they think it through, and now something similar comes up in Durham. They've now built an expertise, and that has worked out tremendously well because they make sure they present the strongest case possible, not just in bail hearing, but also afterwards to make sure they get the strongest punishment possible under the law. So as we are asking for criminal code to be strengthened and mandatory criminals to be increased, we're doing everything we can to make sure criminals get the maximum allowed under the current law.
Thank you. This is from John Edgar. Malcolm Gladwell, Canadian author, wrote The Tipping Point. He discussed solving crime problems in New York City by starting to enforce the little things first. It worked. Besides the major crimes discussed tonight, we see loads of trivial offenses carried out with impunity. Drives me nuts. Would you comment on working on the small crime as a way towards controlling larger crime?
Great question, and broken windows theory, another way to say it, when small things are left, like in a neighborhood and somebody breaks a window, if that isn't repaired quickly, if graffiti isn't removed, then it encourages similar acts. The issue that we have, and it's been mentioned by the minister and the speaker, is the justice system itself and legislation. We would like to see it tougher, we would like to see it have more teeth, because I've never thought somebody would clap for the Hamilton police, but thank you very much. Just kidding. So, you're talking, I'm sorry, I don't know where John is, but sir, thank you. The issue is you're hearing about the sentences that are being meted out for serious criminal offenses. You're hearing about repeat offenders. We need the justice system to start making the punishment certain, severe, and swift. And that's another theory that says in order for it to be a deterrent, the criminals need to know that they're going to pay a penalty, that it's going to happen quickly, and that it's going to be certain that it occurs. And residential break and enter, maximum sentence for that is life. And when you think of all the offenders that I know I've charged for repeat break and enters to residential homes, and they're still just getting probation, they're being released. That we need some help from the justice system in that regard. But go ahead. No, sorry.
Well, we're not gonna, sorry, but I think the other thing, we also have social media, which is highlighting a lot of the incidents that we're seeing. We're seeing cases that all across the GTHA that are high profile, 24/7 news channels. It's always in our face. So we know that a lot of this is going on. We also have huge problems with addictions, and that's really contributing to escalation of physical attacks and violent attacks on residents. And personally, I think we have to do something more with having the ability to restrain and probably house a lot of people who are on the street who should not be on the street. But that is a highly, highly, highly sensitive issue and human rights issue. If you start saying, we want you housed, you have an addiction, you should be in a hospital, or you suffer from schizophrenia, you should probably be in a hospital. That's where I think communities have to start speaking up and talking about what we think has to happen, and supporting those initiatives, because there's a very divided community when it comes to that, but our addiction issue is out of control. Appreciate the work done on thefts. Interested to know what work is being done around domestic violence and crimes against children.
I'm sorry, it's always me. For domestic violence, we recognize the severity of the city did call it an epidemic. We take it very seriously. We have numerous detectives assigned to each division currently that receive special training in intimate partner violence. And last year, it's no secret that our deputy chief had proposed and talked about implementing an intimate partner violence unit to specialize in those investigations. We have a very strong working relationship with our shelter network here in the city. Regular meetings between our investigative services that currently has our intimate partner violence unit, which we do have a 2-member team right now that we want to expand. Working with the Crowns, working with counselors, and once again working with the shelters to try to provide services needed and to try to be open and transparent in that response. So we know we have some work to do, but we're hoping that that's something we're going to be able to resolve in the near future.
Thank you. And then the last question that we have this evening from the audience is for Zee. You spoke of the additional resources given to Crown attorneys to keep these individuals behind bars. How much are defense attorneys opposing bail reform, and why?
I don't know if I can answer that question. The question is better directed to Ministry of Attorney General, because I don't directly work with defense attorneys. What I can tell you with 100% certainty is that every single police service and every single police association in our entire country is supporting it. Toronto Police Association actually, so federal, I think Justice Minister and some federal Liberal ministers met the Toronto Police Association, and then they released it out, did a press release with big fanfare. And Toronto Police Association did a very unusual thing where they released a statement saying this was the first time since they came into power 10 years ago that they actually bothered to meet with us. So while we appreciate that, we want to see the result first. And that was extraordinary, because police associations tend to be, non-partisan, and they don't really tend to attack the government because they work with them. But this was so rare for the current federal government's ministers to actually meet police association. So I don't know what defense attorneys and defense lawyers, if they've actually officially taken a position or not, but I can tell you that every single police association is lobbying for it because the officers are extremely, extremely frustrated. Brockville Police, there was an officer who said she risked her life. They stopped 4 stolen vehicles on 401. They used spikes on 401. And she said, imagine how dangerous it is when they're going at 140, 150 kilometers an hour, and they use spikes to stop these vehicles. They got 4 to 6 vehicles, I can't remember the exact number, but 4 to 6 vehicles, arrested people, did a thing. And when they all get out with just probation, it's really demoralizing for police officers, because then they say, why would I risk my life again? Whitby, so that would be Durham Police. Durham Police showed me a video of an officer chasing a car, and then the driver took off and almost ran the officer over. And then they say, why would I chase the car the next time? Because if this person's gonna be out anyway, why am I risking my life? I have a family, I have kids. And you know what, don't risk your lives anyway, please. But there needs to be, we need to see meaningful bail reform, and we need to strengthen our criminal code. Like I said, when someone who produces child pornography, yes, but children, gets 4 years, it's unthinkable. And one of the things I tell people is, criminal code is about multiple things. Criminal code sense of punishment, because there needs to be an appropriate level of punishment for different crimes. But criminal code also set deterrents that tells the criminals that, look, if you do this, you will do time for this much. So if you break into somebody's house, by the way, one of the things Peel Police has been lobbying for is there is no home invasion charge. It's break and enter. So now more charges can get added on if you have a weapon that gets added on, but ultimately it's break and enter. And Peel Police has been advocating for a different charge for home invasion. So if I break into your house at 3 a.m., knowing full well that I want to catch you when you're at home and traumatize your family, I met somebody whose wife actually did not sleep in the house for 2 weeks after that. Stayed in the hotel till she just had panic attacks every time she came to the house because they traumatized her so much. There needs to be a separate home invasion charge with much higher penalty and much more rights for homeowners. So that's the second thing, deterrence. And actually, let me, before I go to the third thing, one more thing about deterrence is that a lot of, at least in auto theft, organized crime is specifically recruiting young people. And these young people are recruited through their own connected network. So I see my cousin is buying expensive watches and bought an expensive car and, you know, making money. And I say, hey man, hook me up as well, what are you doing? And I get into the life of crime. Now, reverse the scenario. If I saw the same cousin get a 15-year prison sentence, I'd be like, stupid, idiot, I would never do that. And that's the problem. When I see my cousin, I know these are really cousins, so really that's how they're recruiting people. So back to the criminal code, punishment for crime, deterrent. But the third thing is, a society sends a message about what kind of society we want to build through the criminal code. And do we want to build a society where, like Donna gave an example of a child rapist who literally choked and raped a child, was out in a couple of years, then broke into somebody else's house and raped a 3-year-old, and while choking her so she couldn't scream, her parents were in the house. Police did a great job, got arrested in just a couple of hours, but why was he out in 2 years in the first place? Like, why was he out in the street to rape another child? So do we want to build a society where a child rapist is out in 2 years? That's not a society I want to live in. And that's something else we often forget about. Criminal code sends a message about the kind of society we want to create. I don't want to create a society where, you know, someone does something small and gets a hand chopped off, but I do not also want to live in a society where a child rapist is out in 2 years or a child pornographer producing child pornography is out in 4 years. That's not a society I want to live in. So my ask to all of you is please write to your federal members, especially liberal federal members, and demand action, but also call them out. Like, do you believe that our criminal code is strong enough? And I'll tell you what they'll tell you. This thing they tell me all the time. They'll point fingers at the province saying, oh, the court's overloaded, provincial jails don't have space, that's why judges are releasing them. That is not why judges are releasing them. Judges are releasing people because Bill C-75 requires them to release them. And all you have to do is read the statements by different police associations, by Association of Police Chiefs, both in Ontario and federal, Police Association of Ontario, OPP Police Association, Toronto Police Association, see what statements they're making, and all of them are unanimously saying it's the criminal code and not the overloading of the system. Secondly, demand proper criminal code. Public safety is important, and if you're not safe in your home, if you're not safe on your street, then nothing else matters. Like, that is the number one priority. Everything else is secondary. If someone can come into your house and just to get car keys, or in the case of that family in Welland, Ontario, just a couple of weeks ago, rape your 3-year-old and choke her. That's not a society we want to live in. We want to live in a society that tells people that if you dare to do something like that, you're going to go away for a very, very long time. And that's exactly what should happen. And so that should be my last words, actually.
Thank you. And I want to thank you very much, Mr. Hamid. Thank you to the members of Hamilton Police Services, not only for showing up tonight, but everything you do. Please let your colleagues know that we do appreciate and support you. And I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up this evening. It's clearly evident that this is an issue that affects all of us. I mean, it's unfortunate that we had to have this type of a town hall. Think back 25, 30 years ago, the world was very different. We weren't talking about somebody breaking into your house with a gun and demanding your car keys. I mean, those kinds of crimes were unheard of. But we also had tougher penalties, and people were actually serving the sentence that they were given and not being given an early release of a year or 2 years. You can make a difference, we can make a difference. You showed up tonight to tell me that this is important to you. Take your voice to the next level of government and let them know it is also their opportunity and their job to make changes at the top. Thank you all. And if you have any questions, please follow up. You can send your questions to us on via email, and we will get back to you. Thank you all.